The idea of negotiation predisposes that parties involved in a discussion shift grounds for a consensus to be reached. We are still far from that as far as negotiation for a new national minimum wage is concerned. Organised Labour has vowed to reject any little addition to 60,000 naira earlier proposed by the federal government as a new minimum wage. Speaking of the knotty matter, President of the Trade Union Congress of Nigeria, Festus Osifo, said Organised Labour is not insisting on 494,000 naira, but on a substantial amount. Lending their voice to the debate, lawmakers elected on the platform of opposition political parties in the House of Representatives urged the federal government to implement a new minimum wage of more than 100,000 naira to assuage organized labor. Minority Leader of the House, Kingsley Chinda, stressed that failure to pay a living wage for workers is a constitutional breach. Meanwhile, President Tinubu has given marching orders to the Ministry of Finance and Coordinating Minister of the Economy, Wale Edun, to prepare the cost implications of a new minimum wage and present an affordable, sustainable, and realistic figure within 48 hours, which ends by Wednesday, 5th of June. President Tinubu also directed those involved in the negotiation to expedite action so that everything on the new minimum wage can be concluded as soon as possible. Gentlemen, I'll begin with you, Jide. Organised Labour vows to reject little addition to 60,000 naira. Meanwhile, President Tinubu wants the Minister of Finance to report back with costs implication that is affordable, sustainable, and realistic. What could that figure be?
I don't know. I don't have access to the finances of government. But any minimum wage that will come up with that would push the wage bill above 15 trillion in a year is not realizable. You know, some people think, oh, some of us are against Ajero and the rest of them. I'm not against anyone. I'm not opposed to a new minimum wage. In fact, I had pushed and pushed, especially during the Buhari regime, that the minimum wage should have come earlier. The Buhari regime contravened the Constitution by not sticking to the time frame prescribed. The time frame prescribed for a new minimum wage to come into effect is 5 years. Goodluck Jonathan came up with a new minimum wage in 2011. And the next minimum wage that we had was in 2019 or so. 2019. It is. You know? So look at how long it took us to come with a minimum wage. And that's why, if within so short a time in the life of this administration, you're already pushing Nigerians into a strike, you compare to how long it took Lord Jonathan to give us, President Buhari to give us a minimum wage. The difference is like night and day. You know? The new minimum wage was due in 2016. It took 3 years after before President Buhari was able to successfully midwife a new minimum wage. And then, in just 1 year of this administration, because if you even calculate from 2019 to 2024, it's just this year that a new minimum wage is due. And you are already setting deadline that if you don't get a new minimum wage at the end of the month of May, that you are going on strike.
So you think there should have been more time?
Of course. These deliberations take a long time. I don't know how experienced Ajero is in labor matters. because he's a journalist who transmogrified into an electricity worker. I don't know how much experience he has on matters like this, but I know, as a journalist and a historian, that it takes a long while to hammer out a deal once it comes to minimum wage. You see, it's not, if anyone thinks that this thing can be rushed, they are wasting their time. Minimum wage comes with what is called consequential adjustments. It's still part of minimum wage. It's part of what you have to agree. Because every time you come with a minimum wage, every worker benefits. Every worker gets a pay raise. Even if you didn't plan it, you are not going to allow a situation in which the lowest ranked worker begins to earn higher than his bosses. Ideally, minimum wage should affect level 1 to 7. This one now will affect higher than level 1 to 7 because we are looking at a percentage increase higher than we've ever seen. Now, what that means is that the consequential adjustment, the payments that you make to all categories of workers, whether they are level 17, everybody will get something. It's just the percentage that will differ. The quantum of money that you are going to spend because a new minimum wage has come, it will be so huge because it's not those junior workers alone that are benefiting. A lot of people don't know this. They were just shouting minimum wage, pay them. After all, federal lawmakers, they are getting this, they are getting that. You know? We don't know, we do not bear in mind that after a minimum wage is agreed, the consequential adjustments you still have to meet. That one too takes time. Let people go down memory lane and try to find out why it took Muhammadu Buhari 3 years to give us a minimum wage. President Tinubu is being bullied now because he's trying to be the best Democrat that he can be. That's why some misguided people can go and switch off. Enemies of Nigeria can go and switch off the national grid. You know? You cannot rush this kind of negotiations. You have to take your time. Threatening people that you will do this, you will not agree to this thing. What the Osifo, that is, how much does Osifo pay his personal aides, if he has? Can Ajero pay 494,000? In his wildest dream, can he pay 494,000? Can he even pay 200,000 to his lowest ranked staff? Because it's easy to talk about these bandy numbers all over the place.
But now all of these issues have to be concluded within this period of time that has been set out.
Which period?
Well, based on the agreements, based on the meeting that held, or how would it be? Would it be extended? Dr. What do you think?
Let me see. This cannot talk that you cannot. You have to take your time. And I'm saying that even when that, have the governors spoken? The governors were the first to say, look, we will only pay what we can afford. People talk about minimum wage as if it's federal government that everybody is talking about. Whereas federal government is just one leg of a tripod.
And a small one at that.
A small one. If the federal government can afford it, can the private sector afford it? Because it's the federal one that you are intimidating. They went to Aba Electric. Aba Electric is a private electricity company. They switched off their lights. It's madness. There's no other way by which you can define what they've done.
All right, Judy. Let's have a doctor, say something about this.
Well, it's going to be a very long battle. And I hope sincerely that we won't get to where we got to on Monday again. That madness that occurred on Monday, where they went and switched off the national grid. I just wish that these people can sit down for a moment and think that because you are in a group, you are able to wield power of numbers to outnumber those you are dealing with. That it makes sense. It doesn't. It doesn't. These people need to sit down and look at these issues critically, one by one. We've said this several times on this program. The minimum wage before the last one, that was 30,000, 18,000. Some people are unable to pay it. Some state governments are unable to pay it.
People are not paying 18.
They're not paying 18.
18, they are not paying. I know some states that are not paying 18.
And it's not as if the governors don't actually want to pay.
18.
18. They can't afford it. They can't. A lot of things we need to change in our thinking, in our approach to issues. Unionism does not mean that we must bury our thinking process. When we it doesn't mean that because you believe that you are large in number, you can do just anything. A lot of things can happen in the process. We've seen the military regime in this country deploy soldiers to distribute fuel when the workers went on strike. We've seen it. It has happened. Soldiers started driving tankers around the country. A lot of things can happen. So the fact that the government is sitting down and keeping quiet, watching, doesn't mean it's stupid. What they have done clearly is economic sabotage. And I had a lot of...
It's treason.
Treasonable. I've had a lot of them saying they will fight, they will do this. When the law decides to take its course, nobody can fight a government. Those who are urging them on the sidelines, I also wish we would go to their offices and check how much they are paying their workers.
You may even be owing them salaries.
Some owe, including lawyers, some of them senior advocates who are urging them on and telling them the country can pay. How much is our budget for this year? The country. For you to say that, let's even leave out the 9.5 trillion that has been calculated based on what they demanded. Yes. Can the government bring out 5 trillion to pay workers? And the economy will not collapse. The same workers will be talking of water. They'll be talking of roads. This thing is just a matter of sitting down to understand that, see, we are in trouble. The other question for me is, what is the contribution of these workers to the money that the country is making? Go and check it. The private sector, to a large extent, is doing so much to help what the government is getting. So if the productivity level is low from the workers who are agitating now, then something must give way. It can result in a lot of things, and one of it will be downsizing.
Yes.
We've always asked ourselves, how many workers do we have? The last time it was put at 720,000. How much of our money are they collecting? How much of it are they themselves generating? That's why I liked what the chairman of the Federal Civil Service Commission, Tunji Olapa, said. He said, we should be able to devise a means of seeing what each person in the civil service is contributing. Is these people who are doing a lot now?
Pay people based on hours of work.
What are they contributing? What do you do? Because it will come to that if the workers are not careful. There are a lot of redundant workers.
So many.
That government want to sack, you will fight and say don't sack them. So it means they are collecting money for doing nothing. There are a lot of issues involved in this. And the workers themselves must sit down. I can see that Osifo appears to be a bit calmer or saner. I'm sorry to use that word, than Ajero. Those are the kind of people who should go to this negotiation. It's not people who talk before they reason. Because I saw a lot of the things that Osifo said after they shut down the national grid. That it's because there have been no worker to man it. That's why they shut it down. We saw him the last time.
The last time they did, they filmed themselves.
Yes, we saw it the last time.
A bunch of brigands.
Exactly. We saw it when he was laughing. He was so excited that they are punishing the whole country.
Somebody on oxygen.
Yes.
In the hospital.
In the hospital.
Maybe at the point where you switch it off, they were on public electricity supply. You switch it off. You are a murderer. You are a murderer. There's no other way to describe you. You are a murderer.
And there was no problem.
And I'm saying this. I've said it yesterday, and I want to be quoted. If this government permits this national grid to be shut down again, it will mean clearly that the government does not know what it is doing. I'm saying it.
It will also mean that the government has given everybody rights.
It will mean that the government does not know what it is doing. If the NSA and the rest of them will sit down and watch misguided people go and switch off the national grid without thinking of the implications, they've caused a lot of damage now. They've set the country back. And you allow it to happen?
And they are so
What
excited.
is the job of the soldiers if you cannot deploy them to man our strategic national assets? There is nowhere in the world, I dare Osifo and the rest of them to tell me one country where they go on strike and they allow essential services to join the strike. Tell me just one country where it is done.
All right.
And there are African countries that if you try it, as you are turning your back, you get fired. Because people say, oh, there is a lot of things that in Nigeria they dare not do it in another country. Go to Rwanda and try to shut down the national grid, whether you will live to tell the story.
All right. Earlier you said something about the fact that some of these workers, these agitators, are pegging this on the emoluments of our lawmakers. You said something about that. So if that is a consideration, what do you think should be the ideal? Where should we arrive? That would be safe.
It's a ridiculous thing to be talking about the lawmakers. It's a ridiculous thing.
So how do we watch the cost of governance? How do we manage it such that people don't begin to think that the political class is not exactly being considerate, of what they are going through?
I don't think. See, when Ashwari Bola Tinubu took power, his first meeting with governors, that was where he said we need to give the workers a new minimum wage. I think the following week, after he was sworn in, I can't remember, but certainly less than 2 weeks. So you can't say it's not thinking of your welfare. Now, what they had been fighting for, some consequential adjustment to the salary scale, that they had been fighting for years. They only gave medical workers and academic staff. He gave to all categories of workers. That was what he did that day, and some of them in the labor union thought he was trying to give them that one in lieu of minimum wage, and they said they didn't want it. When they saw that they had misyawned, they started going around media houses to say, no, that was not what we meant. Whereas we put one of them on air, who was saying, Holy Ghost fire, that's not what we want. We want minimum wage. So if you want minimum wage, does it then mean that other things that workers deserve should not go their way? Or did you behave in such a manner because you saw that only federal workers were to benefit? There's a lot wrong with the way the labor union is run. It's an amateurish way of running labor. And I keep giving the example. Oshiomhole ran labor in this country where Nigeria was properly shut down. Nigeria was not shut down the day before yesterday. Vehicles were moving around. When Oshiomhole organized his strike against Obasanjo, NURTW, they did not come out. You were stuck in your house. You were stuck in your
Somebody
house.
mentioned
that's
that.
a proper strike. Proper strike. Yes, the voice I some banks opened. Yes. When Oshiomhole organized his own, which bank opened? The people who even take you from point to point, the bus drivers, they did not work. They did not work. But he did not have to go and shut down national grid. He was not rascally to the point of going to shut down national grid. And what people try to justify today because a government has chosen to be lenient, they have to think. The greatest labor leader we've had in this country was Hassan Sumonu. He was also African union leader of the African trade unions. He was not behaving like that. I'm old enough to be able to tell his story. And if you say, okay, well, at least Oshiomhole, even the Gen Zs know Oshiomhole. And it's not as if you are more stubborn than Oshiomhole. You are not more stubborn than him. Oshiomhole has been stubborn. Do you know how many times they arrested Oshiomhole in the 80s? from his days in Arewa Text. The office was very close to where I started work as a journalist. I can tell the story.
All right.
You know, but not to go and shut down grid. You don't shut down grid. If you go there again to try to shut it down, and no Ribadu is watching you, we will call no Ribadu out in this place.
All right.
It's as simple as that. We won't call him out alone. We will call out the government. You must never get near our national assets and say you want to shut down. Where are you coming from? That's impossible.
You see, on the issue of the lawmakers,
yes,
it's always been said here that if they earn more than what they should earn, we should speak out about it. We should be able to justify what they are earning. Sometimes when I also look at what they have, yes, there is a need to talk about it. Some have called for a single legislature at the federal level.
I support it.
Some have called for part-time,
yes,
which is good. Because when you look at a lot of them who are in that,
none of them are doing nothing.
They are doing nothing.
They're just sitting down,
warming
their seats.
Yes, these are empty. That's why when they take roll call, you see at the end of the day,
it's only when they are doing very significant things that some of them show up.
Show up. Only that. So we need to also.
So their constituents, need to ask questions, and perhaps that's the reason.
But the same constituents also encourage this thing.
Money.
They want to collect money from them, so they prefer them to be home with them.
As long as you are giving them.
Yes, once you are home.
If you don't open your mouth to talk in the National Assembly, it's fine.
Nobody cares. Once you come home and you wet the ground, people are okay. So it's a Nigerian problem. We need to go back there in reality and look at it. Whether it's going to be one house, part-time, we need to look at it. Because you cannot tell people to endure when you are living in riches. Unfortunately, for them, what they are even earning is not enough because they have raised their own way of living in such a ridiculous manner that you can't even imagine. Right. Imagine a single, an individual.
That much. They will find a way to collect.
To collect it by way of
that they oversight
function.
They will collect the money. People
That's what they are doing.
Want to do their budget, they will collect bribe from them. So
we still need to get and
mental issue.
Unfortunately, also.
Yes.
Let me.
That's what we can take a break.
We cannot say because because the National Assembly, they are being paid extortionate wages. Yes. Then we should now come up with a minimum wage
that the country can afford.
It's a baseless argument.
Let me add you before you go on the break. When Oshiomhole was a Labour leader, he was fighting very stridently. When he got to Edo State as governor, he knew the difference.
Yes.
And the Labour leader in him left him. Check what he did. He reduced the workforce. That's why the money is here now, can pay what he's paying.
But Oshiomhole started doing all of that. High pressure on him. The politician in him took over. He took back the same people that he told to.
Yes, but at that point, not everybody came back.
All right, gentlemen.
Not everybody came back. He did what he had to do because he saw the reality. So perhaps if these people can see the reality, let's see what they have presented to us. Let us look at it critically.
Let's wait for Wale Edun.
Critically.
The party will go to the president.
Yes, before you come up with this argument that the government can pay. What is in the purse?
Ministry of Finance and Coordinating Ministry of the Economy is expected to report back to Mr. President on discussions on, the cost that government, has been able to gather and what they can pay. And in the word of the president, what is affordable, sustainable, and realistic as new national minimum wage. How much really can government afford? The government has said it's committed to paying over 60,000 naira. Festus Osifo, the TUC president, said Organised Labour is not insisting on 494,000 naira, but on a substantial amount. And lawmakers in the opposition in the House of Representatives want something above 100,000 naira.
I want something above 100,000.
In fact, I want 200.
Maybe
100, 200.
I want 200, but the reality on the ground. If you say the reality on ground will determine that.
But how would that?
I want to be as close as possible to what I think
Okay. And what's
And the minimum wage law has been bastardized in our country. But what is the point in saying, okay, this is minimum wage, only a fraction of stakeholders can pay? And it's not a national minimum wage anymore. It's not a national minimum wage anymore. This is not the first time we've had minimum wage. In 1981, we had minimum wage of 125 naira. It was the law. At that time, our currency was stronger than the dollar.
That 125 naira was $188.
You know? So, a minimum wage is something that is the minimum that any employer of labor
Should pay.
His lowest ranked staff. It means that in TVC here, maybe our security or our cleaners, they should not earn
lower than that minimum
That's
wage?
the minimum wage.
Minimum.
In the US, it is every state has its own minimum wage.
Yeah.
You know, some have minimum wage higher than the national average. You know, it is not a problem for them, but for us in Nigeria, we want something that everyone will be able to afford. Not a situation in which, oh, this state is not paying up till now. This state is not paying even 18,000. That's
right.
not what we want to see. And the only way to achieve that is to
Yes.
be reasonable, come up with something that you know.
All right. So my guest in the studio, Babajide wants something a little above 100,000 naira.
120.
Okay, 120,000
yes.
naira. Dr. Adilo wants 200,000 naira.
Yes, why I actually want 200,000? It's not because I also feel we should make the currency go gaga. Because what happens usually is
Because the impact, yes, we're going to...
The impact on inflation and all that.
Yeah.
it will impact on it, certainly. But why I said so, because I've said I would prefer 200 because of the reality we have in our system now. But if the government can quickly ramp up all its promises to us, CNG buses, we have a better rail system and all the rest. Yes, we don't need that much cash. What we need is the strengthening of the naira. We just said something about when we had 125 naira as minimum wage. That 125 naira, when I checked before coming to the program, was $188 at that time. Meaning that it was about 60-something naira more in strength than the dollar. So these workers who are agitating now, they also have a lot to do in terms of making the economy better. They've always said it with pride. They are the engine room of democracy. But we've not seen this. Because despite the fact that only few of them have been in jail for fraud, running government, there is no minister or any political appointee who take decisions without the involvement of the civil service. So we also need them to be able to check some of the loopholes that we have in governance that is resulting in leakages. They should be fair to the country when it comes to workers who are redundant. We've said it a couple of times. Some workers have not done anything to justify the wages they've been receiving in the last 8-10 years, the wage they've been receiving in the last 8-10 years, because they've not done anything. Where they are working has shut down completely. So these workers too need to work on that. And then let us have value for our money. That's what we need. When you check it, who are those who sabotage the economy? Is it just the politicians? No. When you go to banks, which also have its own union, UBFE, which has this, which has senior staff in this, how do they get dollar in and we cannot find it on the streets? They are the ones. So they should begin to talk to themselves so that we can have something realistic, something that can take people home, and not that the salary is finished before they even get home. That's my own point. Right. It will be difficult for us to go that far now. I know, certainly now. But over time, we can get it up to that once these things begin to fall in place. If I can do transportation, say from here to Ibadan, I'm sure I'll get a train that is going to go my direction, stop me close to where I'm going. And I can go to Ibadan and come back with 500 naira. Government built its own houses, mass housing, and they can force landlords who are taking 2 million naira for 3-bedroom flat in certain areas of the town to come to as low as 200, 500,000 naira. Those are the things that we should be working on, because without bringing down the costs of goods and services, what we are going to do by increasing salaries, introducing inflation.
Exactly.
A landlord who hears that you have been paid more will increase salary. The market woman.
But it's just that one is just for me. It makes no sense to simply go and increase prices of goods.
But that's what happens.
That's what happens to us.
It is not a culture.
Inauguration day, the
It is
president
not a
announced
culture that
subsidies
is
gone.
good.
It is not at all.
How do we change that?
Everywhere
style?
in the world, workers get salary
Increase, yeah.
except where labor is weak. Workers will always fight for their rights. You ask for increase in salary, increase in allowances and all that. But it doesn't mean that because workers have had their salary increased, then you should go and increase. I mean, it's unnecessary profiteering. And if we have a system that works, people should not be able to simply increase prices of goods and services in a manner that inflicts pain on our people. Such people desire to be locked up, And that's why some people are calling for price control or something.
Yeah, price control.
Because things are getting out of hand. People are just doing what they like, selling out. You increase price, and then when you blame the dollar, you blame the sliding, the slide of the naira. When the naira now regains strength, you refuse to
bring it down.
So this is the thing. We cannot say, because we fear that Yalojas and the rest of them will increase prices of Atarodo and all that, therefore we should not increase worker salary. It is a constitutional thing that every 5 years you must review the minimum wage. It's a constitutional thing until the law changes.
All right.
So, and we will not say because we fear that these market women will go and increase, then we should not do what the Constitution mandates us to.
It is not even about the fear. It is about the fact that government should be able to intervene in these things, like you said. That's the point.
We also have to do soul searching.
Exactly. Yeah. Everybody must.
Government cannot do everything. If on your own you make up your mind to make life unbearable for your neighbor, then you should know that you are not a good citizen. It's not the government that will be going around and be telling everybody that no, but this is wrong now. No. What is your own role as a citizen? Are you playing your role? Are you behaving like a good citizen or an enemy of his country who will go and switch off national?
All right, gentlemen.